I remember the exact moment my world ended. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. No thunder crashing outside. No screaming match that shook the walls. It was quiet. Too quiet. I sat across from the man I had loved for 18 years. In a sterile lawyer's office, the pen in my hand feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My fingers trembled as I signed my name on the last page of the divorce papers. Emily Thompson. That name that had once felt like home now felt like a stranger's. The lawyer slid the documents away with a polite nod. And just like that, it was done. 20 years of marriage gone. The house we built together. The business we poured our souls into. The dreams we whispered about under the same blanket every night. All of it gone. He got everything. Every single thing. And me. I walked out with 2 suitcases, a battered old car that barely started, and a heart that felt like it had been hollowed out with a spoon. Divorce left me with nothing. But what I didn't know that day, what I couldn't possibly have imagined, was that the man I once called my everything had actually taken something far more precious than money or bricks and mortar. And when he finally realized what it was, well, that's when everything changed. Let me take you back. Because to understand how I ended up in that cold office with nothing but the clothes on my back, you have to understand the life I gave him. My name is Emily, and for 18 years I was Mrs. Mark Thompson. We met in our early 20s at a small tech startup where I was a junior developer and he was the ambitious sales guy with the big smile and even bigger dreams. He had this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room. When he asked me out for coffee after a late-night deadline, I said yes, without thinking twice. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, married in a little chapel by the lake with wildflowers in my hair and forever in our eyes. I gave up everything for us. My career because someone had to stay home and build the foundation while he chased the big contracts. I was the one who coded the first version of his app in our tiny one-bedroom apartment. While he pitched investors, I was the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. fixing bugs so he could walk into meetings looking like a genius. I handled the bookkeeping, the taxes, the endless emails, all while learning how to cook his mother's recipes, because he missed home. When the company finally took off, I was the one who designed the logo, chose the office space, even picked out the furniture so it felt warm instead of corporate. People used to say we were the perfect team. Mark would stand on stage at conferences and talk about our vision, but in private he'd pull me close and whisper, "Baby, none of this would exist without you." I believed him. God, I believed every word. We bought the big house on the hill, the one with the wraparound porch and a view of the mountains. We traveled first class. We threw parties where everyone toasted to Mark and Emily, the power couple. I never minded that my name wasn't on the company papers. I never minded that the world saw him as the brilliant founder, and me as the supportive wife. I loved him. That was enough. Until it wasn't. The cracks started small. Late nights at the office that turned into client dinners, perfume on his collar that wasn't mine, texts that made his phone light up at 2 a.m. and then go silent when I walked into the room. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself marriage has seasons, that after 18 years, things get comfortable, not exciting. I cooked his favorite meals, wore the lingerie he liked, planned surprise weekends away just to keep the spark alive. I ignored the voice in my gut that whispered something was wrong. Then came the day everything shattered. It was a Tuesday. I had spent the morning at the salon because he always said he loved my hair long and soft. I had his favorite steak marinating in the fridge. I was humming in the kitchen when he walked in, still in his suit, and didn't even kiss my cheek. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, and said, "Emily, we need to talk." His voice was flat, cold, the same voice I'd heard him use on competitors. "I've met someone else," he said. "Her name is Leila. She's She makes me feel alive again. I want a divorce. I laughed at first, a broken, ugly sound that echoed off the marble counters we had picked out together. You're joking, right? But his eyes didn't lie. They were the eyes of a stranger. He told me he had already spoken to a lawyer, that the papers were ready, that he had been unhappy for years and I just hadn't noticed, he said. I had become complacent. Complacento. The word cut deeper than any knife. I begged, I cried. I reminded him of every sacrifice, every late night, every time I had put my own dreams on hold so he could shine. He just looked at me, like I was embarrassing him. This isn't about blame, he said. It's about moving forward. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet. That night, I slept on the couch because the bed smelled like him. The next morning, the movers arrived. Movers he had already hired without telling me. Within 2 weeks, the house was listed. Within a month, the divorce was filed. And that's when I learned the real truth. The man I trusted with my life had been planning this for months. He had moved assets into offshore accounts. He had rewritten the company structure so my invisible unpaid contribution didn't exist on paper. The prenup I had signed in a hurry 18 years ago, back when I was 24, and believed love conquered everything, suddenly became ironclad. The court hearings were a nightmare. His lawyer painted me as the lazy wife who never worked a day in her life. Mrs. Thompson enjoyed the fruits of Mr. Thompson's labor, he said, but contributed nothing tangible. I sat there in my one decent black dress, the one I wore to his mother's funeral, and listened while they erased me. My lawyer tried, but what could he do? I had no money for experts, no savings in my name. Even the jewelry he had given me over the years was suddenly listed as gifts that belonged to the marital estate. I lost the house, I lost the cars, I lost the retirement accounts, I lost the business I had helped birth. The judge gave me a one-time settlement of $20,000, enough for maybe 3 months of rent in the city we had built our life in. Shared custody of our dog, Max, went to him because the dog is used to the backyard. Even our friends chose sides. The ones who had toasted us at parties now sent polite texts saying they didn't want to get involved. My own sister said, "Maybe this is for the best, Em. You can finally find yourself." Find myself. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the faucet dripped. The carpet smelled like old cigarettes. I sold my wedding ring at a pawn shop, just to buy groceries, and a second-hand laptop, so I could look for work. At 42 years old, with an 18-year gap in my resume, no one wanted me. I applied to be a receptionist, a barista, a data entry clerk. Rejections came in waves. Overqualified? Underqualified? We're looking for someone with recent experience. Nights were the worst. I would lie on the lumpy mattress and replay every memory like a movie I couldn't turn off. The way he used to trace circles on my back when I couldn't sleep. The way he called me my rock in every speech. The way he once got down on one knee in the middle of our kitchen and said, "Without you, I'm nothing." Lies. All of it lies. I stopped eating properly. I stopped answering calls. I stopped believing I would ever feel whole again. Friends who did check in told me to stay strong, to find a hobby. But how do you find a hobby when your entire identity was wrapped around a man who just threw you away like yesterday's trash? I was broken. Completely, utterly broken. But even in the darkest nights, when the tears wouldn't stop, and the pain felt like it would swallow me whole, there was a tiny spark I couldn't see yet. A spark that had been buried for 18 years. A spark that Mark had taken from me, without ever realizing it. Because while I was coding his dreams, supporting his vision, and loving him with every piece of my heart, I had been writing my own story in secret. Late at night, after he fell asleep, I would open a hidden folder on my old laptop and pour my soul onto the page. A novel. A story about a woman who gave everything and was left with nothing. I called it The Silent Partner. It was fiction, but every chapter carried the weight of my truth. I never showed it to him. He would have laughed. He would have said, "Baby, stick to what you're good at." So I kept it hidden, year after year. And now, sitting in that cheap apartment with nothing left but my pain and my laptop, I opened that folder again. The words were still there, waiting. I didn't know it yet, but those words were going to become the weapon that would destroy the man who thought he had taken everything from me. The first few months after the divorce were a blur of survival. I got a job waiting tables at a little diner, downtown night shifts so I could cry during the day without anyone seeing. My feet ached. My back hurt. The customers were rude. The tips were small, but it paid the rent and kept the lights on. Every time I poured coffee or cleared plates, I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who hosted dinner parties for 20 people and never broke a sweat. Now I was the one saying yes ma'am and coming right up, while my heart bled quietly behind my smile. Mark moved on fast. Instagram stories showed him and Leela on the yacht we used to take out together, her in my spot at the head of the table, her wearing the diamond necklace he once gave me for our anniversary. The caption always read something like, "New chapter, new love." He never mentioned me. It was as if I had never existed. I tried to stay strong for the few people who still cared. My best friend Rachel would call and say, You deserve better. One day, he'll regret this." I would laugh through the tears and tell her I was fine, but I wasn't. I was drowning. I started seeing a therapist once a week, paying her out of the last of my settlement money. She told me the pain was normal, that betrayal rewires your brain, that I had to grieve the life I lost. Grieve. I was grieving a man who was still alive and thriving while I scraped by on minimum wage. The anger came in waves. At first it was quiet little sparks when I remembered how he had smiled while signing the papers. Then it grew. I would lie awake replaying every conversation, every promise, every time he had looked me in the eye and said forever. How could he do this? How could the man who once carried me to bed when I was sick turn into someone who hired movers to pack my life into boxers while I was at the grocery store? I found out more about Leela. She was 20, a marketing intern at his company. The one I had actually trained on the phone system because Mark said she was eager to learn. Eager. That's what he called her while he was planning to trade me in like an old car. The betrayal wasn't just the affair. It was the years of lies. The way he had looked at me every morning over coffee and pretended everything was fine. The way he had let me plan our 20th anniversary trip while he was already interviewing divorce lawyers. I hit rock bottom one rainy Thursday night. I had worked a double shift, my uniform soaked from the walk home because the car had finally died. I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxers I still hadn't unpacked, and I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. I screamed at the universe, at Mark, at myself for being so blind. Then I cried until there were no tears left. In that moment I thought about ending it all. The pain was that deep. But something stopped me. A tiny voice inside whispered, "Not yet. Not like this." That was the turning point. I remembered the novel, The Silent Partner. I opened the laptop with shaking hands and started reading what I had written all those years ago. The words were raw, honest. They bled on the page, the way my heart was bleeding now. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let him erase me. I was going to write myself back into existence. Every night after my shift, I wrote. I wrote until my eyes burned. I wrote until the sun came up. I turned the pain into chapters. I turned the betrayal into plot twists. The heroine in my book was me but stronger. She discovered the hidden bank accounts. She exposed the affair in front of the entire board. She rose from the ashes and burned his empire to the ground. It was fiction, but it felt like truth. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe that the exhausted waitress, with the dark circles under her eyes, was secretly writing a novel that was going to change everything? But the words healed me. Slowly. Page by page. The anger turned into purpose. The heartbreak turned into fuel. 6 months after the divorce, I finished the manuscript. I sent it to agents with a simple query letter that said, "This is the story of every woman who was told she was nothing, until she proved she was everything." Within 2 weeks, I had an offer. A big one. A major publisher wanted it. They saw what I saw, the raw emotion, the universal pain of being erased by the person who promised to love you forever. They gave me an advance that paid off my debts and let me quit the diner. For the first time in months, could breathe. But the real storm was just beginning. Mark found out about the book when the publisher started sending out advance copies to influencers and reviewers. One of them was a journalist who had interviewed him years ago. She recognized the details. The yacht. The necklace. The way the husband in the book always called his wife my rock right before he destroyed her. She reached out to me, then she reached out to him. The first time he called me after the divorce was 3 days after that journalist's message. His voice on the phone was tight, angry. "Emily, what the hell is this book? You can't publish this. It's defamation. I'll sue you for everything you have," which isn't much, by the way. I laughed. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard from myself in over a year. "Mark," I said softly, "you already took everything. There's nothing left for you to take. And this book, it's mine. Just like the life I built for you was mine. You never saw it. You never valued it. But the world is about to." He hung up. But the calls kept coming. His lawyer sent cease and desist letters. Leela posted passive-aggressive stories about people who can't let go. His company stock started to dip as early reviews leaked online, calling the book a heartbreaking expose of Silicon Valley's golden boy. Clients started asking questions. Board members started whispering. Meanwhile, I was healing. I started therapy again, this time not to survive the pain, but to understand it. I joined a women's support group, where I met others who'd been discarded the same way. Their stories mirrored mine, and for the first time I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't broken. I was a survivor. The book launch was scheduled for a beautiful bookstore downtown, the same one where Mark and I used to browse on Sunday mornings. I wore a simple black dress, and the only piece of jewelry I had left, a small silver necklace my mother gave me before she passed. No diamonds, no flash. Just me. The night before the launch, Mark showed up at my apartment, unannounced. He looked smaller than I remembered. The confident swagger was gone. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept. "Emily," he said, standing in the doorway with rain dripping from his coat, "please, don't do this. You're destroying everything we built." I looked at him, the man I had once loved more than life itself, unfelt. Nothing. Not hate. Not love. Just a quiet emptiness where the pain used to live. "Mark," I whispered, "you destroyed us the day you chose her. This book isn't revenge. It's my voice. The voice you silenced for 18 years. You took my time, my youth, my dreams. You took my name off every success we ever had. But you forgot one thing. can't take my story. It was always mine. He tried to argue. He tried to apologize. He even cried. Real tear. But it was too late. The woman standing in front of him wasn't the same woman he had left in that lawyer's office. She was stronger. She was free. The next morning, the book hit the shelves, and the world noticed. The book exploded. Within the first week, it was #1 on every bestseller list. Reviews called it raw, unflinching, and painfully honest. Talk shows wanted me. Podcasts begged for interviews. Women across the country sent me messages saying, "This is my story too." I did one interview where I simply said, I was left with nothing, and in that nothing, I found everything I had lost. Mark's world began to crumble. The scandal hit the tech blogs first, then the mainstream news. Headlines read, Tech mogul's XY pens, explosive to law. Was the empire built on lies? Clients pulled out. Investors asked for audits. The board forced him to step down as CEO. Leela left him 2 weeks after the launch. Apparently the spotlight wasn't as glamorous when it showed the ugly truth. He tried to fight back. He filed a lawsuit, claiming defamation, but my publisher had lawyers who were far better than the ones he had used against me. Every detail in the book was fictionalized, just enough to be protected. Every painful truth was wrapped in art. The judge threw the case out. Then came the final blow. The company he had built, the one I had helped code from nothing's bleeding money. Investors wanted out. The stock was tanking. In a quiet auction, an anonymous buyer purchased a majority stake. That buyer was me. I had used every penny of my book advance and the royalties pouring in to buy back what was always half mine. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I finally understood my worth. The day the papers were signed, I walked into the office I had once helped furnish, the same office where I had stayed late fixing code while Mark took the credit. He was there, clearing out his desk. When he saw me, his face went pale. Emily, his voice cracked. You bought the company? I nodded. Calm? Strong. At peace. I didn't just buy the company, Mark. I bought back my life. You thought you took everything when you left me with nothing, but what you actually took was my voice, my dreams, my belief that I was enough. You took 18 years of my love and turned it into a transaction. You never saw the woman behind the wife. You never valued the partner who made you who you are. Now the world sees her, and she's no longer silent. He looked at me then the way he used to look at me on our wedding day, full of regret, full of loss. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was stupid. I threw away the best thing I ever had. I smiled. Not with triumph, with closure. Yes, you did, but I'm not the one who lost, Mark. You are. I hope one day you understand what real love looks like, because it doesn't look like trading your wife for a newer model. It looks like the woman who stayed when no one else would, the woman who built you up when you were nothing. That woman is standing right here, and she doesn't need you anymore. I turned and walked out. The sun was shining through the glass walls we had chosen together. Max, our old dog, was waiting in the car because, yes, I had gotten him back too. I drove away from that building without looking back. Today, 2 years later, I live in a new house by the sea. Not a mansion, just a home that feels like mine. I run the company known as the silent partner, but as the face and the voice. I mentor young women who want to build their own dreams without losing themselves. I speak at conferences about resilience and the power of your own story. And every night, I still write. Not out of pain anymore, but out of joy. Mark. He's somewhere trying to start over. Last I heard, he was consulting for small startups, trying to recapture the magic he once had. He sends occasional message, his polite. Careful. I don't reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of peace. Some doors are meant to stay closed. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. Betrayal will break you. It will leave you standing in the rain with nothing but your tears and your truth. But in that broken place, if you listen closely, you'll hear the whisper of your own power. The dreams you buried, the voice you silenced, the strength you forgot you had. Divorce left me with nothing until I realized that nothing was the most powerful starting point of all. Because when you have nothing left to lose, you finally have everything to gain. The man who thought he took everything from me actually gave me the greatest gift of all, the chance to become the woman I was always meant to be. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all. Thank you for listening to my story. If you're out there right now feeling broken, please know this. The best chapters of your life are still waiting to be written by you. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and never let anyone steal your voice again. I love you all. Good night.